What's going on, everybody? Evan here. In today's video, I am putting the iPad 10 head-to-head against the iPad Pro. So let's get into it. Looking at the front of both the iPad 10th Gen and the M1 iPad, similarities are throughout. With the iPad 10 moving to the new design with the sharper corners, thinner bezels, and home bar instead of the home button, these devices are looking quite similar. Except one small change that Apple made to the front of the iPad 10th Gen. More on that later. Moving to the back of the iPads, things begin to change, whereas the iPad 10 has only one camera, and the iPad Pro has two. Also, laying these flat on a table, you will notice that the iPad Pro is a little bit thinner than the iPad 10. The iPad 10 has a depth of 5.9 millimeters, and the iPad 10 stands at 7 millimeters. This is due to the difference in the display's construction. I am sure that this is due to cost cutting, but Apple decided to include a non-laminated display with the iPad 10, which on the iPad Air and the Pro, the displays are laminated. What this means is that there is not a gap between the glass and the LCD. This makes the Apple Pencil feel a lot less like you are actually writing on glass. And it also helps with glare. So if you are sitting in somewhat of direct sunlight, you will notice much more of a glare on the iPad 10. But that is not all. There is a difference in resolution, where the iPad 10 has a 2360 by 1640 resolution and the iPad Pro is 2388 by 1668. I am sure this is just due to the smaller display size on the iPad 10, which is 10.9 inches compared to 11 inches on the Pro. Also, max brightness on the iPad 10 is 500 nits, whereas on the Pro, max brightness is 600 nits. Both have the fingerprint resistant coating, but the Pro does include the anti-reflecting coating on the display as well, which additionally helps with more glare. As well, Pro Motion Tech, which is the higher refresh rate, is included in the iPad Pro and not the iPad 10. As for color gamuts on these iPads, the iPad 10 display is sRGB, as the Pro uses the P3 wide color gamut. Both displays support True Tone display. Lots of technical words in there, but these are the major differences in these iPads, so this is why I included this first, and we'll break all this down in this video. Now, Apple Pencil support is a whole thing on this iPad 10. I talked about it in my iPad 10 review, so if you have any thoughts or questions about that, I'll link it in the description so you can check that out for those answers. But Apple Pencil support is on both of these iPads. Difference being is that the iPad 10 supports the first generation and the iPad Pro supports the second gen. But both pencils support pixel precision, tilt, and pressure. They really differ in appearance and charging method. Personally, I like the look of the first gen better. With the different use of textures, I kind of like it. But use, feel, and features, the second gen is much, much better. I have been an iPad Pro user for just over a year now, and I love my Magic Keyboard. Yes, there are some gripes about it, like with the no F key or the slim adjustability on the display, but what it does very well. I am always typing scripts while sitting on the couch for some reason, and this case helps with that, because this case makes the iPad very lappable, if that's a feature. But this was one of the main reasons why I did not pick up the smart case for the iPad 10. But the smart connector on the iPad 10 has moved to the bottom of the long side, so the Magic Keyboard will not work here, as it is on the back of the portrait side of the Pro. So these cannot share keyboards. But one keyboard that I have heard great things about is the Logitech Folio. They have released a model for the iPad 10, and it does come with a pencil holder, as well as a removable keyboard. So big plus there. Now, the main reason why Apple went with the Pencil first generation on the iPad 10 is the new camera placement. Finally, we have a proper landscape camera on this device, but we lose the point where the Apple Pencil 2 magnetically attaches and charges. But I think Apple can make this change to all iPads going forward and do something like Samsung did with their tablets and maybe use the back of the device to charge the Pencil. Just please don't make us go back to this. Terrible. But both devices have the main 12 megapixel wide camera as the main camera. The Pro adds the 10 megapixel ultra wide on the back for those close wide shots, as well as the iPad Pro supports ProRes recording. This is what it looks like and sounds like when using the front-facing camera on the iPad Pro. As you can see, I am pushed to the side of the screen to be front and center on the device and on the screen. I have to physically move myself in front of the camera, which puts me off to the display, which is very hard to see if you are talking to somebody on the screen. Makes it kind of awkward. And here's what it looks like and sounds like using the front-facing camera on the iPad 10. As you can see, I am centered in the shot. I can see who I'm talking to right below the camera. It's much easier for video calls and really general recordings. It is really unfortunate that Apple is still selling the 64 gigabyte model as the base model for the iPad 10. The only upgrade is to 256 gigabytes. It just seems like 128 would be a great start, but I'm sure Apple just wants you to pay for the extra storage because it's an easy upgrade. But the iPad Pro comes in all sorts of configs, starting at 128, and it goes all the way up to 2 terabytes. Absolutely crazy, but that's what it can do with the M2 processor. External monitor support is finally here for iPads, but it's not. This was kind of a shocker for me that only M processor iPads are supported. I would think that the A14 Bionic could more than handle this kind of stuff, especially with moving over to USB-C, everything lined up for monitor support. But for now, we will have to wait. So the Mini, Air, and Pro are the only iPads to support the external support. I did a full video on that as well, and I will link it in the description below. Now, to the major part of the show, performance. What we all came here for. Between these two devices, we aren't talking about a generation or two. We are talking about a full leap in performance. The A14 Bionic is a great mobile processor. With a 6-core CPU, 4-core GPU, it can handle 99.9% of the apps on the store, from games to productivity apps, photo editing, and more. But if you are one that wants to be the best in gaming performance, the best in app performance, then look no further than the M2 processor. With the 8-core CPU and 10-core GPU, this thing flies through anything you throw at it. From top-end games like NBA, racing, COD Mobile, or apps like DaVinci Resolve, this processor was made for this, and it shows in its performance. I was waiting for apps like this to come since I picked up this iPad Pro, and it has not disappointed me yet. The sound on the iPad 10 is improved from the 9th generation, but compared to the iPad Pro, it just doesn't get as loud or as clear, because whereas the iPad 10 only has 2 speakers, the iPad Pro has 4. Really, without being side by side, honestly, the iPad 10 sounds good. Another category where these start to differ is in connectivity. The iPad Pro comes with all the latest add-ons, but you can really save some money if you do not need them. First is the USB-C connection. The iPad 10 uses USB-C standard, whereas the iPad Pro supports Thunderbolt or USB 4. This is really shown when you are transferring files to and from the iPads. The iPad 10 comes with Wi-Fi 6, whereas the iPad Pro comes with Wi-Fi 6E. Now that is 2 times the connection speed, but really, are you going to use over 1.2 gigabytes per second? I highly doubt it. And both include support for 5G cellular connectivity, but you do need to purchase the upgraded model, which is usually $100 or so. So that is the full rundown of the iPad 10 versus the iPad Pro. Let me know down below which one you are interested in, or if you've already picked one up, or even if you're picking one up in the future and you're trying to decide. Any questions? Shoot them down below, and I'll try and get back to every single one. If you made it to the end of the video, thank you. Please leave a like, as it helps push the video to more and more viewers like you. And again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.